Mavens. This is Maria Baer, and I own the Baer Minimalist. I do residential organizing here in Indianapolis, specifically really helping busy families create organized spaces and systems within their homes. So while most of my business is working inside of people's homes, I'm obviously taking a few weeks off to manage things here on the home front while you all do the same, and thought it would be really fun to connect and share just a few ideas that I have for tackling some of the projects that might be kind of staring you right in the face right now. I'm going to wait just a few more minutes, or maybe a minute, to let a few additional people join, and then we'll kick things off. I've got all sorts of props and things to share with you tonight, so that'll be really fun to go through. I'm currently sitting on the floor in my kids' kind of area, so just getting comfy. All right, so thank you guys for being punctual. I'm Maria Baer, and I own the Baer Minimalist. I do residential organizing here in Indianapolis, so basically I get to live out my passion for organizing every single day, working in clients' homes to help them figure out systems that make sense for their families. So there's certainly not a one-size-fits-all remedy when it comes to organizing, and that's why I really like working with clients to figure out how their families function. But my goal tonight is to just give you guys some tips for tackling some of those projects that might be staring you in the face right now as we spend a couple of weeks at home. So the other thing I wanted to mention though is if you're home, you're juggling your job, you're doing e-learning with your kids, you're trying to support everybody that lives there in your house, there probably are a lot of projects that are on your list. Definitely give yourself grace, and if all you get to is that junk drawer and you don't get to the basement or you don't get to the garage, don't feel guilty. There is certainly always a time where we can tackle those things down the road. So one of the first things that you might be trying to figure out is what type of project should I choose? Kind of depends on how much time you have on your hands. So I would say really kind of look at your circumstances in your household and determine what can I start but also finish in this time frame. Because I think when we have projects that are kind of halfway done, that's where things just get really frustrated and can sometimes derail. So what I did was I thought through some of the projects that are in some cases low-hanging fruit, that are probably projects that we all need to take care of in our house. And then I also thought of just some larger projects that are great if you do have some time on your hands and you just want to tackle something that is kind of always on a lot of people's to-do list but never really gets done when it comes to organizing. So I'm just going to kind of go through each of those and give you some ideas for specifically in the situation that we're in right now, how you can tackle them, and then I'll kind of go through my process too. So one of the first spaces that comes to mind is your pantry. That is one of my absolute favorite spaces to work in my clients' homes because it's very cut and dry. Food is either expired or it's not. So when it comes to your pantry, I would say go through and double check all those expiration dates on the food that you do have. And if there are items that recently expired, maybe put those on a shelf or in a bin and label it "Eat First." So that gives your family kind of the ability to know, okay, these are maybe some snacks that I should be munching on today instead of the things that you just picked up at the grocery store last week. Another idea that can be really fun, I think, in getting the family involved would be taking a look at those items that are about to expire and doing kind of a chopped challenge with your family. So lay out the ingredients and let your family kind of come up with different ways to use those ingredients, and let somebody kind of win that challenge and cook dinner for the family. Another space that might be one that you want to tackle while you've got a little time at home would be your bathroom. So I feel like in that space, there's also, again, going to be expiration dates on things. On medicine, certainly there's a date listed. On a lot of your products, your makeup, your hair products, body products, there is going to be a little label, and it looks like a little makeup jar, and it might say 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and that is when it expires from the day it's opened. So that might be something that you take a peek at, because those items definitely expire and kind of lose their luster after a while. So when it comes to organizing your bathroom, something that might be a fun activity for you and the kids over the next couple of weeks would be to do a spa day and use up some of those products that are just kind of waiting for a rainy day. I think we all get a lot of those products, maybe, around the holidays or birthdays, and they kind of sit around kind of like wedding china, just waiting for that perfect occasion. So that might be an opportunity for you to kind of get the kids engaged and do face masks or paint your nails, or better yet, put the kids to bed and do those things for yourself. But take the time to kind of use up some of those samples that we all seem to have lying around. The next item that I wanted to touch on would be digital. So I feel like in some of my clients' homes, I'll see huge collections of CDs or DVDs, and those items just kind of are collecting dust at this point in time based on how digital we are. So something that I did actually a couple years ago that I loved, and I'm so glad I did it, because now my CD collection is gone. It doesn't take up any space. So I pulled out those CDs and I created Spotify playlists. So based on different phases in my life, I have a high school Spotify playlist, college, studying abroad, songs that remind me of my family. And the cool thing about that is there's still an opportunity to play those playlists. In fact, I probably listen to them more frequently because they are accessible every time I pop onto Spotify. And yet it also allowed me to get rid of all of those CDs and just donate them. Because frankly, at this point, I don't even have a way to play those. And I'm sure a lot of you are in the same boat too. When it comes to DVDs, I think that, again, there's so many movies and TV series that are streaming right now. So maybe take a look at the ones that you have and weed out those that just don't make a lot of sense to have in your household anymore if they're readily available on, Netflix or Hulu and the like. Same goes for books. I love reading, and I do like physically holding a book, like I'm sure many of you. But what I've done is actually create a Pinterest board that kind of serves as my bookshelf. So I do still have some favorite books on hand, but I wanted to have a place where I could kind of catalog those items or those books that are really important to me, but I didn't necessarily need a physical copy anymore. So I created a Pinterest board. It's private for myself, but it's just my digital bookshelf. And so if anybody ever needs a recommendation or I'm kind of trying to remember a book that maybe I want to reread, that's kind of my go-to spot. You guys should see all the secret Pinterest boards I have. I use them for everything. Someone asked earlier on the discussion board about toys. So toys are tough, and I actually have 1-year-old twins. They just had their birthday on Sunday, and so we definitely are in the thick of it with tons of toys, and the older they get, the bigger the toys get, and so that can be something that I think is really challenging for a lot of families. So my tips for toys, really assess, are they broken? Put the puzzles together. Are you missing pieces? are they still age appropriate for your kids? So those can be some good criteria when it comes to weeding out what no longer makes sense to have in your home. And then you've kind of have to figure out what to do with what is left. So what we've done and what has worked pretty well here in our house is we turned a portion of our coat closet near, kind of the front door into a toy library for the kids. So basically I put some shelving in there from Target and put most of their larger toys in there because I wanted my house to still look a little bit like my house that now has children living in it instead of, hey, this is where my kids live and I sleep here too. So I created this toy library, and then each day we pull out a couple toys to play with, and I feel like it keeps their attention so much better because there are just a few options, and it's so amazing to see how creative they get with those toys. And then we, after lunch, kind of switch out to a couple of other toys to, kind of be strewn about throughout the afternoon. So for us, that is something that has worked really, really well. And I would say these next few weeks while you're home, this is an excellent opportunity for you to see what your kids actually do play with. Because for a lot of families, I think when you get kids involved and you say, hey, we're going to donate some of your toys, it is so challenging. They are really tied to those items. And they'll say, but that's my favorite and that's my favorite. But this is just kind of a neat time, I think, where you can see, okay, what are you really gravitating towards and what no longer makes sense for you? And really working with them to maybe think of a family or think of an organization that is in need. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But donating those to somebody who could really use them right now. The next area I wanted to touch on would be your closet or your kids' closet. So I was thinking this is kind of a cool time to go through your closet or some of those items that you might be saving, whether it's items that you're saving for or from your kids or items that you're saving from your past, and kind of do a little fashion show and with your family kind of share some of those stories of why these items are so meaningful to you. We've got a lot of time right now, and I know that our time is used differently as we kind of work through this circumstance that we're in, but you probably do have a little time and you're looking for these kind of random activities to pass and to connect more with your family. So it might be kind of fun to pull out some of those items, maybe your wedding dress or items from when your kids were babies, and show them and talk to them about why those items are so meaningful. As far as the items that are kind of taking up space though in your closet, what I do with my clients is really go through, and there's a couple different things that we talk about. So it is, what is your current lifestyle? Now for these couple weeks, I'm sure we're all, kind of in our loungewear, but what is your current lifestyle? So do you have a bunch of maybe business suits, but you no longer work in that type of environment? There are great places that those can go, like Dress for Success downtown. Do you have a bunch of formal gowns that you probably won't wear again? Again, there are some really great resources like the Gifted Gown or the Riley Prom that would love to have those gowns for families that are attending prom. So really looking through every single item and determining, does this still fit my lifestyle? The other thing is, does this still fit my body? I know that as women, our bodies are kind of changing all the time. And so I really recommend having items in your closet that fit you right now. And if there are some items that you want to hang on to for, different phases that we might find ourselves in, whether that's maternity clothes or, the next size down if we're working, working to kind of tighten things up a little bit, keep those in another closet. Make sure that the things that you've got in your space are things that fit you, but also that make you feel great. Because sometimes something fits and it just isn't, we look in the mirror and we just don't feel great in it. So definitely take the time to kind of comb through everything and make some decisions about what is worthy of being in your closet and worthy of being worn by you. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Another area, and this is going to be a much bigger project, but again, you might have a little bit of time to do this, would be your memory boxes. So in all of my clients' homes, I feel like when we get to the garage or the basement or the attic, we start to get into all of these family heirlooms that have been passed down, or memory boxes that moms and dads have saved for their adult children to take on. So sometimes that collection can be quite large. Maybe it's a couple totes, but maybe it's a dozen totes, maybe it's 20 totes. And my guess is you probably haven't looked at those items in a long time. So this might be a really cool opportunity for you to kind of get your kids involved and pull those totes out, look through them, and determine, are these items still things that I want to be hanging on to? I think that if you think about your own children, or maybe you have gone through those memory boxes, everything seems to have a lot of significance right off the bat. So I'm just right now saving little bits of my kids' clothes, but everything is so cute. And I remember, they did this while they wore that and what have you. But frankly, I think if you look at it in a year, or if it's your memories from childhood, you look at it, 20, 30, 40 years after those items were saved, you might find that just a few of them really hold a lot of meaning to you, and a lot of the others just don't need to be taking up that space. So I would say, share those stories with your kids. Share, this random schoolwork that, your mom hung on to for you. Show them what you did, all those years ago, and then kind of decide if it's worth saving. I would say some of my clients really do well if we set some boundaries. So maybe if you do have a dozen totes, maybe you say, you know what, we're going to do 2 totes for my memories instead. And one is going to be my childhood and one is going to be memories from my adulthood. And so if you're somebody that kind of works well within boundaries, that might be something that you kind of decide upon before you start opening up the floodgates of all these memories. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I will highlight all of the resources that I, and websites that I mention, I'll make sure that those are highlighted afterwards in a comment. But Legacy Box is a company that you can actually send your VHS tapes into, photos, from old albums and that sort of thing. I think that a lot of people save all these framed photos, but the frames have no significance, so you could get rid of the frames and hang on to the photos, but you can send it all into Legacy Box, and they will actually create cloud storage for you with those items, or a DVD, and send that back to you, which is a little bit more relevant at this point in time and something that you could actually access on a more frequent basis. The other thing that you might be wanting to dig into, I don't think anybody ever wants to dig into paper, but maybe you've got a little bit of time. Probably everyone's least favorite category. And I would say, in fact, I think this is a known statistic, that about 80% of the papers we keep are never looked at again. So I would say that if you decide that you want to take a look at some paper, one of the things that you can get rid of right off the bat would be all of the manuals that are taking up space for the appliances in your home. There is another really cool app called Centric, and again, I'll highlight this afterwards, but basically you put in the SKU, or I don't know if it's really called a VIN number on a dishwasher or a refrigerator, but you put in that number and it'll actually pull up the manual. So it's all saved in your account. It also links to troubleshooting YouTube videos and links to service people in your area for those specific appliances. So that's a great way to get rid of a ton of bulky paper that I feel like we all kind of hold on to just in case something happens. The other thing is if you don't want to deal with, putting it all in an app, that's fine, because it is all on the internet too. So a quick Google search, you can probably find everything that you need. As far as, other items that can be probably put to the shredder or recycled, I always recommend checking with your accountant. So as you're handing in your tax items this year by, I guess, July 15th at this point in time, maybe just check with them and see what their general rule of thumb is in terms of how long you need to keep items. But there's probably a lot of receipts and bills and that sort of thing, again, that can be accessed online. And finally, I think one of the other areas that people really have a lot of questions about would be kids' art. So I just saw Andrea Claymeyer pop on, and I know that she did something called Archive, which basically what you do is you pull all of your kids' art together, and they will send you a box. And basically you fill it up. It can be 3D art, it can be oversized, it can be, your regular 8x10s. You send those art pieces in and they photograph everything, put it into a beautiful book for you and send it back. They can also send the artwork back, but if the goal is to kind of figure out a way to condense it, these books are awesome. They're a super cool keepsake for your kids and a nice way to kind of get rid of some of that stuff that, again, is just kind of bulky and weird to store. Again, that's called Archive, and I'll make sure to link to that as well. So then it's time to organize. You've picked your project, and now it's time to organize. So what do you do? So my process is that initially it's edit and declutter that space. And then once you've done that, I always say, let's take another look through and just make sure. I think the more decisions you make, the easier it becomes. And that is why I generally recommend starting in one of those kind of low-hanging fruit areas like a pantry or a bathroom where things are going to be expired or they're not. Once you have decluttered, it is all about categorizing and kind of making a plan. So I feel like where a lot of people, they get very excited about the shopping piece. And so they're really quick to run to the Container Store and buy everything that looks cool. And then they get home and it doesn't really fit the space. So I always say declutter first. Then you should kind of categorize it all and lay it out within the available space that you have. And then I would say always assess your vertical space. So if I'm in a closet and I see that, we've got some shelving here, but I've got this blank wall here, what can I do with that blank wall? I use a ton of command hooks. They're great for hanging purses, hats. In a pantry, maybe they hang your aprons or random tools. They can be used everywhere. And they are such a great way to just take up that vertical space that is just itching to be filled. The next thing that I do is measure. So I measure all of the shelves. I measure the depth, the height, what I'm dealing with. Do the shelves move? If they can be moved, I will move them to make sure that I can, make a system, again, that works for the family. So measure, write all those measurements down, and then you get to go shop. So I obviously love the Container Store. Target has great stuff. I find random stuff though everywhere. Sometimes Aldi has really great bins. So I've got some tried and true things that I've shared over the years on my blog, but turntables are really awesome, or Lazy Susans. They work great in pantries and in bathrooms. I use a lot of baskets. And again, think through how you want to function in a space. So I think a lot of people, I'm guilty too, kind of get sucked into Pinterest. I want everything to look perfect, but can you keep it up? And can your family keep it up? Because I think that's the biggest thing. You want your family to be able to work within a space, and so in a kid's space, I love using clear bins. Now, it does mean that you can see everything, but clear bins are so good for kids because they can see what goes where. And when it comes to labeling a kid's bin, I like to use photos if they're not at an age when they can read of what needs to go in that space, instead of having like my normal calligraphy, labels where that would make no sense, although it might look pretty. So really think, am I somebody that needs to visually see everything, or do I do a little bit better with woven baskets or plastic baskets where I can't see what's inside, but I can have nice uniform labels? So just kind of think through what makes the most sense for you and your family, because at the end of the day, your life probably isn't going to be on Pinterest, and that's okay, to just make it work for you. Just checking my notes again. So we always have a pile for items we're going to keep, items we're going to sell. And my rule of thumb with selling items is if it is brand new or really, really sought after, it may be worth selling, but always think of the value of your time, because I feel like we hold on to all these things with the intention of selling them, and they just cause us a ton of stress. So there's great consignment stores in town, and wherever you're tuning in from, I'm sure there's a great consignment store, but sometimes it's just more trouble than it's worth to try and sell things. Donate. And when I started my business 3 years ago, it was so important for me to help my clients connect to community organizations that are in need. So I actually have a donation guide, and if you want to send me a private message with your address, I will actually mail this out to you tomorrow. But this donation guide is so fun. Lindsay Hadley helped me design this, and she does all the Indy Maven branding too. But this is specifically, it's, where to donate all of those items all across town here in Indianapolis. So this is an awesome resource. And then I also have, if you just want to go digital, I have a page called Donation Resources on my website that you can certainly reference, because there are a ton of places in need all across town. Next up is items that can be recycled, so those should be able to be taken care of hopefully relatively quickly. And then items to toss. So somebody was asking, what is worthy of donating and what should just be tossed? I would say a lot of things are worthy of being donated, because even if it is a household item that is no longer your style, or maybe clothing that doesn't fit you, there are so many people in need. And I think that even with what we're going through right now, there will be even more people who really would absolutely love to have some of the items that just aren't working for you in your home anymore. As far as items to just straight up throw in the trash, I always say if it is broken, stained clothing, missing pieces when it comes to toys, that is unfortunately trash. Some of it might be able to be recycled, but don't put that in a bag for donations or drop it off at Goodwill, because honestly, then they have to go through it, and they're spending their time and being paid to spend their time going through things that are truly trash. So make that decision, or have me over and I'll help you make it. And then So once you've kind of figured out all of your, different piles, you've got your donation guide, I had another question about what can I do right now? I do think that a lot of these organizations are probably closed for donations right now, which makes sense. But there is something called Give Back Box. And basically you can fill any cardboard box, so maybe one of those Amazon shipments you're getting, with clothing, household items, print a free shipping label on their website, or they do have some that are $15 where you can send it to a specific charity, but they do have a free label. It can go USPS, so you can schedule a pickup for that, and they can get your small stuff off your hands right now. So that is a really nice resource that is still up and running, even though some of these local organizations might be kind of closed for donations right now. And then the last thing that I do, so once I've donated my items and I've picked out all my product and I've put everything in the bins and baskets, is you've got to label everything. So if I've ever worked in your home and I see a handful of my lovely clients tuned in, I love using gift tags. These are Rifle Paper Company, which is one of my favorites, but I love using gift tags to put on the front of baskets, so I'll tie them on. But I actually have another organizer who lives out on the East Coast who does these amazing vinyl labels, like this Eat First vinyl label that I'm going to put on a bin in my pantry. And the really cool thing about these is they are really, they're easy to get off if you're trying to get them off, but they stay put. So they're not like ones that you might have from like a label maker or something like that. They're $2 each and they're so pretty. So they can really make a space look finished. I think that like beautiful labeling really makes a space kind of come together and makes it just so pretty. So I would say, again, I'll link to those so you guys can check them out, but there's all sorts of vinyl labels on Etsy that work really well on plastic, clear acrylic containers, those sorts of things where you might not be able to hang a gift tag. Let's see. I think that I touched on all of the questions that I saw. I'm just going to double check here to see if there's anything I missed. I love all the comments. Oh gosh, so fun. Okay, so one person asked, Jennifer asked, I lost my pantry and linen closet when I moved. I have had to consolidate both in one space. What is your suggestion? So I would say just be realistic about what your family actually needs. And I feel like this is such a weird time to do that, because I think that a lot of us are kind of in that panic mode. And so it may seem like we need more than we normally do. I do feel like right now, like we're stocking up on things because we're really not sure of how long this might last. But when it comes to linens, I really recommend having no more than 2 sets of sheets. In fact, in our house, we pretty much have, my kids have more than 1 set, but for a lot of our beds, we just have 1 set because we wash it and we put it right back on the bed, because who wants to fold those fitted sheets? No one. So I would say, when it comes to towels, having maybe 3 towels per person, and no more than that. So just kind of look through your items. If you have like beach towels, those can probably be stored somewhere else. They could be stored in clear totes in your garage if you've got a little bit of extra space, or maybe in like a basement bathroom or something like that, because they're not used all throughout the year. As far as the pantry goes, there are, if you have a regular door on the back of your pantry, Alpha, which is done by the Container Store, has a really nice door units. And that can be a great way to add like 30% more space to a small pantry, because you can put all your canned goods in there. So that might be an option. And then again, just, seeing if your shelves move, and if you do have access to a good handyman, maybe they could add an additional shelf for you. But check out the vertical space that you might be missing right now. See if some items can be hung. I have worked in a lot of small spaces. In fact, I have a pretty small pantry myself, and it is amazing how much space you can kind of find if you get a little bit creative about it. But feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to do a virtual session with you or with anybody that popped on, because I really miss going to my clients' houses every day. So I see a ton of lipstick on my teeth. Okay, so I feel like I've taken all sorts of your time tonight, but thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching this on repeat, thank you as well. And I just want to say that I am always here. So if you have any projects or you get stumped along the way, you take any of my suggestions, I would love to see your before and after pictures or help you decide on product that makes sense. So there's a lot of progress I think that we can make over these next few weeks while we are spending a little bit more time at home, or a lot more time at home. So thank you guys so much. Again, I'm Maria Baer, and my business is called the Baer Minimalist. And I just want to say thank you so much to Indy Maven for having me kick off this Facebook Live series for them. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.